Thank you so very much, Your Excellency. We are most honored to have you in our midst.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Please, after accompanying the Deputy Governor, we are all expected to come back, please. We are all expected to come back for the next presentation, please.
I see we are. Here we are. Yes. Hey, sorry. Yeah. Yes. Just 15 guests here.
We are all expected, please, our postgraduate students and undergraduate students, you are most welcome. And we want to appeal that you be part of this very important aspect of your intellectual and academic formation. The next presentation will come from another reputable professor from the University of Maiduguri in Borno State. So please, we are well seated, and any moment from now we will call on Professor Usman Tar, Commissioner of Information and Internal Security of Borno State Government of Nigeria, to come and speak to us on a very important aspect of this international conference.
So I come answer a confusion. You don't know whether you should go.
Professor, now so get a lecture that I will have another one in the afternoon. So you will excuse me.
Yeah, we can understand.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And
well done.
Thank you, sir.
citation.
in ya zo in time to in bai zo ba don maybe manga za ka faɗa don na san su yi magana da printer yau za su haɗu su zauna su yi going over the thing.
Tura maka ne a WhatsApp ko ne?
Kana iya turawa. Kana iya turawa. Yes, please. Thank you very much. Well done.
Yes, I see. Okay, what is keep on talking? So that people will How many minutes? How many minutes do you want to?
You will use, is it 45 minutes?
The one in the US.
Yes.
He said he's going to office.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's okay. So let him just check.
It's okay. Hello.
Who is in charge of this?
Have some kind of
Internet.
no, we don't have time. It's not from here, it's waiting.
Why are you? Why are you?
I was thinking that plan for this vacancy.
Please, we are expected to come back. The next presentation will commence. Please let us come back to the hall. Faculty members, please, we should come back.
We're thinking that we can call some of the professors from the faculty that are here to be on the high table.
Okay, yes.
Particularly heads of the faculty.
Okay.
Then we'll just go ahead.
This professor, what is his name?
Yes.
Yes. Please, on this note, let me invite the head of department of religion studies, Professor Dayoru Inwa, to please come to the high table. I also call on Professor Shamsuddin Ilyas to please come to the high table. May I also invite Professor Ambe Alfred Neba, Professor of Accounting, to please come to the high table. Let me also invite Associate Professor Adamu Omar, aka TJ, to kindly come to the high table. Yes. We are all welcome to the first international conference of the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, one of the largest faculties in this university. What we have witnessed until now is the opening ceremony, which sooner than later we are going to conclude. The first lead speaker has presented his talk. Professor Umar Pate, Vice Chancellor of Federal University of Kashere. And we are all thrilled with his exposition of the topic on the need for value regeneration in our socio-economic system, Nigeria. With the presence of our Dean, Professor Ibrahim Waziri Abakar, who will commence the second presentation, which will be by Professor Usman Ta, the Commissioner of Information and Internal Security of Borno State Government of Nigeria. So please, on this note, we will continue, and I am going to read the citation on Professor Usman Ta, who is ably and competently represented by a very humble scholar from Federal University of Kashere. Citation on Professor Usman Ta. Usman A. Ta, PhD, He's a professor of defense and security studies at the Nigerian Defense Academy. Professor Tar was the Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, Director of the Center for Defense Studies and Documentation, and pioneer head of Department of Defense and Security Studies in the Academy. He was a member of the Board of Social Science Research Council's African Peace Building Network, New York, United States of America. He was formerly Associate Research Fellow at John and Elnora Ferguson Center for African Studies, University of Bradford, United Kingdom. He was also an assistant professor at the Department of Politics and International Relations and director of postgraduate studies at the University of Kurdistan, Hela, northern Iraq. Professor Tar earned PhD in Peace and Conflict Studies from the University of Bradford, United Kingdom, Master of Education, M.Ed from Leeds Metropolitan University, Master of Science in International Relations from University of Maiduguri, Postgraduate Diploma in Research Methodology from University of Bradford, Postgraduate Certificate in Education from University of Brighton, and Bachelor of Science in Political Science, First Class from the University of Maiduguri. Please, a round of applause for him. Professor Tar is the author or editor of over 30 books and contributed over 100 articles in high-impact scholarly and policy platforms. Professor Tar was a member of the Federal Government Committee to review the National Defense Policy 2014 to 2015. Presently, he is a member of the Federal Government's Defense and Security Think Tank. He is a member of the Federal Government Entourage to the Republic of Sudan to present an expert paper on Nigerian experience in federalism in 2014. Professor Tar was a member and expert of Eminent Persons Group of the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, NIPS, in 2014 to 2015, and chair of the governing board of the African Institute for Border Security, a non-governmental organization based in Accra, Ghana, since 2019. Professor Tar has consulted or consults for several organizations, including the Westminster Foundation for Democracy, United Nations Development Program, and Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, the German Development Fund. He has also served as visiting professor and external examiner to several institutions of higher learning in Nigeria and overseas. Professor Tar is happily married and blessed with children. On behalf of the Vice Chancellor and the Dean of the Faculty, I call on the representative of Professor Usman Tar to please present his paper.
Okay, thank you, Mr. MC. Okay, thank you once again, and good afternoon to everybody. Let me express my confidence on the already established protocol that needs no review. I am presenting the keynote address or keynote speech on behalf of Professor Usman Tar, and I have decided to go a little unconventional by tagging the keynote as one step forward, multiple steps backward, a call for African scholars to be intellectually careful. I ask you to pardon me in case I sound unconventional or possibly absolutely African. This is a conference convened by a whole faculty of a university, a notable university in the tertiary education landscape in Nigeria. And we're here to talk about value system and how it affects challenges at global level. But I said I'm afraid of the outcomes. Afraid of the outcome of this discussion if we are converged here to repeat the normal tradition of presenting papers, asking and answering questions, questioning or challenging methodologies used, and insisting on adopting models that cannot translate into problem solving. And then I want you to know that humanity has no option but to be very careful, because even the scholars of this continent seem to be intellectually caged, intellectually forced to believe that value is what others have designed, is what others have developed, and that you stand no chance but to accept it as it comes. And it doesn't come without a price. It comes with the price of abandoning your own values. Internationalization of value here defeats our internally developed values. That's why I said I'm still afraid seeing how we accord greater emphasis on mere abstractions. Scholars, please pardon me. Mere abstractions that will remain the same because of a disease we call the false paradigm. The false paradigm amplifying an instance where you get caught up in between extremes, where you feel whatever is projected from outside your country is the true appearance of your country. When they tell you about your debt profile, you agree with it. Your level of income, you agree with it. They use some kind of calculation to say this is your GDP and you agree with it. They tell you that you are intellectually backward, you agree with it. That your ancestors are historically defeated, you agree with it. You are nothing but a caged individual, all in the name of intellectuals. And that is the disease. And we see that as more reliable as a point of reference, reliable enough to define our tomorrow today. That is why I said I am afraid. If we are truly converged here in the interest of amplifying and protecting this false paradigm, then we are already intellectually defeated. The case as it is, the disease has actually manifested in coloring our thoughts, limiting our, pedigree, restricting our intellect to rating intelligence based on our ability to attain fluency in spoken English. And this is always at the expense of problem solving. Professor Kiari Tijani of blessed memory asked in a class, in an MSc class, what is education? And more hours were spent trying to look for a definition of education, limiting all amplified thoughts to the textbook-oriented thoughts. He quickly said, waste no time, understand the fact that education is not beyond problem solving, understanding the gap between where we are and where we want to get to, understanding the relationship between cause and effect. That is all. No matter how educated you think you are, but you do not understand the difference or relationship between cause and effect, then you are only but an intellectual illiterate. And I so much like what he said. Because we do not respect problem solving, because we are afraid of being tagged as roadside experts or sometimes intellectual quacks. The more you run away from this reality, the more complex your problem becomes. And we feel too inferior even before the population that is made to believe we are indeed very special. Holding multiple degrees, being able to deliver lectures, plan for tomorrow's or for other people's tomorrows intellectually, actually combine to make you special. But yet you decide to look not special because you feel absolutely inferior. So the issue about value, it is only conventional if we think that value is about consistency, is about established beliefs, is about principles that guide our behavior, that guide our judgment and decisions. But these values cannot in any way be unconnected with culture, society, religion, even you as an individual. Your perception is very important regarding what is right and what is wrong. In spite of the saying that what is right and what is wrong lies in between the extreme of objectivity and subjectivity. And some scholars believe that every attempt to objectify subjectivity is a celebration of deceit. But yet, with that, do we continue to cage ourselves to understanding value from the point of view of another, leaving the engraved pattern of thought that built us, that built the way we think, that made us what we are today as African scholars? If what is considered as good or bad is not context dependent, then we are not intellectually inclined. If what the scholars across the Atlantic says you are backward, in spite of how much you try, you still remain backward simply because they said you are backward, then you are intellectually caged. And to this point, unless we break that web, break that chain, we'll continue to be intellectually enslaved. And that will mean no matter how much we step forward, we still step what? Backward the more. And in view of that, we must realize that all these set values, according to whatever that define or regulate our behavior, value, I think, stands as a signature by which we are known. And we establish that through consistency. How consistent is that behavior before it becomes your signature? Why do we need signature at bank to collect money when we are using checks? Why do you still need signature to access into your account even at the ATM machine? Because it's something that is recognized because of what consistency. 243172 is the pin number, is the pin code, is the whatever, is the signature. It is that behavior by which the machine identifies you are the one. You apply for a leave, you apply for a scholarship, there is a need for you to append a signature. That simple graph that you use, unless you use it consistently, it does not stand as a signature. You use one today, you change tomorrow, you change another one today, you will be disappointed and embarrassed during very important transactions because they'll say the signature does not agree with the one reflecting on the mandate paper in your bank records. It's that behavior that we are talking about. The consistency of that behavior is what we are talking about. The consistency of your judgment is what we are talking about. For as long as you are able to allow it to have an engraved impact or effect on your personality, then it becomes a signature. And that is what value is talking about. My younger brother yesterday sent me a small talk. At a point in time in our sporting history, there was an Olympic, and then some guys were running, they were about to finish. Someone actually put every effort to make sure that he got it, and then he became incapacitated. And then he was pushed by another contender to be able to get to the finish line. The contender who pushed that person was nothing but an amplification of a signature of justice. Are we together? So the question is, for as long as you display a particular behavior that you cannot consistently maintain and consolidate, then it doesn't stand as a signature. You don't call that as a value, because value must enjoy consistency. And in view of that, I said in the course of achieving that, there are what we call solidarity, which may be organic, which may be mechanical. I know the sociologists here can explain better, but yet each of this will come into play. And then each of this will gradually assume significance. And then as it grows bigger, it becomes what it is because it has been able to acquire additional characteristics as the history continues. And by that, the standard, the identity will define you, will define your group, will define your work system, will define the entirety of our society. So the consistent behavior here actually helps in what? In allowing us to cultivate those characteristics that are good enough to stand as our signature. But remember, in the course of that, value enjoys transition. While it has an environment of cultivation, it also has an environment of adoption. What lies in between is what poses challenge to humanity. Humanity's ability to be perfect continues to be a question that we cannot answer. As intellectuals, as African scholars, have you ever asked yourself, why are we still not perfect in timekeeping? Have you asked yourself, why is there a difference of a minimum of 11 days between the lunar and the Gregorian calendar? Are we not perfect? Someone was asking a question, who told you that 60 seconds should be 1 minute? As much as we try to be perfect in timekeeping, do we still believe that a person can start counting from 1 or from 0? From where do we start counting? African scholars. From where do we start counting? From what? From 0? Okay, how many 0 houses do we have in this university? Can you tell me? Can you show a 0 house, a 0 hall, a 0 classroom? Do we really start counting from 0? Yes or no? Where do we start counting from? 1. Is there no value less than 1? It's a matter of intellectual controversy. So a combination of this results in what may be ascribed to form the global standard or best practice. The issue of today, Nigerian universities being outside the fold of 1,000 best universities in the world is truly subjective. But we believe that we are not good enough to be within the fold. The observation here is that it's wrong. We are good enough to be there. But because we so much believe in their value, that it's what they say that is and must come to stay. What about instances where our locally graduated students will go and make a difference? What about those who attended under the 3 primary secondary schools that will go and graduate with 4.98 CGPA in Berkeley, in Rotterdam, in the hearts of MIT? What does it tell you? Do African scholars still believe that only their value counts, not ours? That's why I said, pardon me, because I will sound both unconventional and too African. So basically, this conference expects attendees to develop and enrich perspectives, as Professor Bati said, on what the conversation should become globally. Are we always the dustbin, as Bati said, that only their conclusions matter, only their models matter? Or do we think we also possess the propensity to theorize and come up with models that can be adopted globally? So please be realistic in answering these questions. Just let's work together. How significant is the value system in shaping and changing the history and destiny of humanity in a world that promotes competition between humans and machines? What are we talking about today? As Pate was saying, how AI is used today in actually attaining a lot of things that cannot be depended. The difference between Abia and what did he say? A person cannot establish. What hope is there if humanity refrains from the concerted efforts of allowing machines to take over through artificial intelligence? Today, write an ordinary email. You want to rely on what they have done. Sometimes talk to your girlfriend. You want to rely on what let me search on the internet. How do I talk to a girl? Or let me go to howstopbox.com and then talk to a girl, press enter, and then you see a prototype and then you copy. The convergence, there's something that we are afraid of. They call it digital integration. This is what is currently being promoted. If a black person makes any headway in mechatronic research, he is celebrated. What are they trying to do? To make sure that there is a convergence where you cannot function without artificial intelligence cannot function without you. When that convergence, when the digital integration is actually done, then there are a lot of things that you don't have any option but to even rely on the machine-generated values. Machine-generated values. Anything short of that, because you will have been, attached with trackers that will monitor your behavior. Anything outside the machine framework is not acceptable. That is our fear as African scholars. Because we seem to emphasize on productivity as defined by that machine more than anything else. The questions continue. Are academics only researching to impress the world at the expense of humanity's sustenance? Sometimes you, in the social management science and even the arts, you come up with models that you know are not good enough for humanity. But simply because you came up with a model and you want to be celebrated, then you go ahead and amplify it. You disseminate it using different fora. Workshop, conferences, journal publications, and what have you. Do we still believe that genetic modification is the way just because it offers greater output with no concern for humanity? When you go to buy apple, you want the bigger one. And it's genetically modified. The smaller one, what is it? It's organic, but you run away from it. That's the issue. You want to buy chicken, forget about the other one. That's the mentality. As African scholars, who is talking about that? How many political science research have we actually undertaken to measure the implication of genetically modified crops? Why have we decided to be lazy and be following them, whatever they say, and then you think is the in thing? And you think humanity will forgive you? As sensitive as machine is to us, should pharmaceutical research outcomes be machine guided if the same kills more than it protects? For all of us that have been here for a number of years in this world, you could remember when all you needed was 10 naira chloroquine to cure malaria. But it was just giving you wellness on a platter of gold. And the pharmaceuticals felt it's wrong for them not to make more money. And the medical doctors were sponsored to convene different conferences talking about chloroquine-resistant malaria. And we all agree. 10 naira was all you needed, but they now introduced artisanal, 250 naira. 10 naira that was needed, you have to multiply it by what? By 25 before you can get cured. Because it makes money for them. We understand medicine is very sensitive. Is it not killing us more than it protects us? It makes us more dependent. The same question, At most individual level, why the emphasis on money at the expense of humanity? This is the issue. During election, the alleged taliya na wallahi, malam ban taliya wancan me kawo. That's the issue. No matter how credible a politician may be, for as long as he does not have money to give the electorates, the party leaders, and what have you, then he's a nobody. That's the word. So we don't think about humanity. We don't think about morality. Then is the time when sex is glorified at the expense of morality. If you want to make money today, don't sell food items. Sell sex enhancement drugs. Am I lying? That's the issue. All we are thinking about today is what? Is sex. The males and the females. Mata, kayam mata. Maza, kayam maza. This is how in today African scholars are thinking. Are these not among the factors that combine to endanger our tomorrow today? That's another question. So the value system, if we are wrong to assume, the value system serves as the same generator of those challenges that this conference is talking about. And that is what colors our future. Ivan Wallace said, we are supposed to be fascinated by the future because that is where we are going to live the rest of our lives. What are we doing to intellectually secure it? It is only natural to observe that sustained challenges spread to affect human-machine relationship in a negative form, thereby not only increasing operation-related risk, but also influencing organizational propensity to engage in strategic renewal, even where there are evident delivery or operational gaps. If we are not careful, if we do not moderate our relationship with machines, we develop a lot of injuries. Now, almost everyone here is suffering from what we call tech neck. Tech neck. You go on medical examination, if you can get those that are good in, what do you call it, orthopedics, to measure the level of problem that you are sustaining as a result of putting your head down because you are looking at the screen of a phone, then you will not be happy with yourself using any technology. It is called tech neck. It's very dangerous. So the core challenges, we said, while some are natural, some of the challenges we are trying to address here, all the papers you are presenting here, while some are natural, significant control of them are human cultivated. Value system is just another contradiction as we use our hands to stab ourselves, all because we need to make a name. What is this guy? Yeah, anytime you come on a conference, he will be questioning your methodology. He will say your Cronbach alpha is blah blah blah. Your R squared is faulty. Your confidence limit is not supposed to be applicable. Your blah blah blah. We're all trying to impress one another to show our prowess intellectually at conferences. But what solutions do we prefer? Nil. I said, as natural as climate change may appear, the role we humans play in deforestation alone has made our vegetation cover vulnerable and our green belt difficult to restore completely. How many geography, how many climate change researches have we actually come up with, and what is their propensity to solve the problems? So with the preached global value, they talk about peace, they talk about integration. Since the time of League of Nations, after the First World War, to what we currently have, a child of the 1945 Charter, why is the global system blind about so many things that will have made you better? Economic growth and social inclusion remains questionable. Environmental and natural security gap is widening. Agricultural and food security is questionable. The future of financial system is absolutely, unpredictable. Gender parity remains a very big question. International trade and investment, still questionable. Public health at absolute risk. In which of the above indicated challenges is there any visible balance? And what are we doing? Now, I said, need I remind you, African scholars, on the following issues? Number one, what are African scholars doing about those issues? Are we going to remain in the same shell of awaiting external solutions to internal problems? Do we decide to rely on those models and projections that will never address our complications? Do we continue to theorize in the context of their assumptions that do not reflect our peculiarities, let alone address problems therein? Do we rely on deliberate falsehoods cultivated, for our consumption and regrettably promoted by us under the guise of media freedom and perpetrated through hate speech and fake news? Are we going to strengthen the negative value through researches and inquiries because they are the topical issues and we attract grants all in the name of impressing the already retarded system? And I said, what next? African scholars should rise up to the retarded but much propagated values that are cooked to prepare the African brain to accepting only the Western as exemplary and African as archaic. African scholars must learn to put heads together at conferences such as this to come up with initiative to Africanize or even re-Africanize knowledge using our peculiarities as focal points. African scholars must take the continent or must make the continent proud by initiating adoptions, gradual inputs, until various aspects of the continent's social, political, intellectual, and economic transformations are achieved. A syndicate in each field. After this conference, you could form syndicate in sociology, political science, blah, 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 blah. Then, meet. After you form yourself into clusters, think, then prepare a perspective. Then, defend that perspective at another conference. It will be critiqued, but it will be realigned and disseminated for adoption as African input to global conversation. Then, African scholars assembled here must believe that value begins as an individual thing, propagated through interactions and assumes significance because it is believed in by others. Africa must champion the value revolution by redefining all indices that can help humanity sustain in the context of legitimate practices. You are in the sociology department, and all you think of is to promote your knowledge, your subject, by engaging in research on same-sex marriage. Measure the impact it will generate. In the course of the study, you are going to strengthen the belief in that very bad act among the respondents. If Africa can be silent, Africa is not going to help them to propagate the idea. But when it is talked about over the radio, when you take research papers, you see same-sex, all these things, you are as good as helping them to propagate the idea. Don't we have other areas of sensitivity to address as researchers? By this, a signature of excellence and global integrity, devoid of hypocritical and double-standard tendencies, will have been developed by African scholars. Usman Tara, while he is waving his fraternal hands to all members of this very important gathering, said, while wishing all scholars successful interactions, valuable conclusions, Professor Tara solicits that your inputs combine to address core challenges through research outputs, and that they should be superlatively relevant for academic interpretation and reconstruction, the same way they will combine to amplify the place of value system in addressing the core challenges in this contemporary global world of ours. My apologies, my gratitude, and final call. I said to the ears that want to hear the West, and the West, my apologies. To the organizers of this conference, my gratitude. Then to African scholars, Africa must rise up intellectually to sustain a forward step through arts and social science research. Thank you all.
This applause is for Isaac, not for Professor Ta. Please, round of applause. Thank you so very much, Dr. Lawal, for this thought-provoking presentation. There is no doubt you have done justice to the keynote speech by Professor Ta. The time for a fundamental paradigm shift in Africa's value system and the way forward is now. And there is no apology to any form of ideology which contradicts the Africa's position, Africa's heritage, and Africa's tradition. I think that is the summary of the talk by Professor Ta. We are so grateful, sir. In fact, you have professed, and there is no doubt that you really have the major idea of Professor Ta's paper. And we honestly, on behalf of the Dean and the LOC, thank Professor Ta for such a thought-provoking presentation. Without wasting enough time, we will move to the next item on the agenda, which will be the second lead paper by Professor Samuel I. Zalanga. Professor Samuel I. Zalanga. And he is going to present his paper virtually. He's currently in the United States of America, and he is going to engage with us in the light of the technological industrialization and development. He is with us and with all our online participants. So in no time, Professor Samuel I. Zalanga will commence presentation of the second lead paper. I'm sure the organizers are trying frantically to connect with Professor Zalanga. Wherever he is, this is an apology because he has other engagements in the faculty at the Bethel University in the United States of America. So as soon as he finishes with us, he has other academic and professional engagements to carry out in the United States of America. So as soon as we can visualize, we can see Professor Zalanga, will have the honor on behalf of the Dean of the faculty to render a brief citation on Professor Samuel I. Zalanga. You are all welcome to this international conference, and after the opening ceremony, we are going to move to the various syndicates which will be announced during the announcement before the closing remarks.
Presentation today.
Okay.
It's just that which the time is around 1:30. Originally, we were supposed to resume for virtual syndicate today by 2. Maybe it's going to be shifted by 30 minutes or so. Because once we are done with this presentation now, the vote of thanks. Okay. That's the end of the closing. It's okay.
It's all right. Thank you, Prof. Thank you. So So, as soon as he connects, I will read the citation.
No, read the citation now.
Okay.
Because I don't know their program. You want to play it as audio, but that thing is a video.
I see.
Me, I prefer that it's shown, and this, people can see the video and hear the audio.
Okay. So let me read the citation.
Okay, that's it.
For our PhD students and master students, you are very much welcome to this robust intellectual fiesta. The idea behind academic conference of such is to give you the basic orientation about the nature of the academic world. For you to excel as an academic, for you to make impact as an academic, for you to engage intellectually, then attendance of conferences is paramount in your career. So we are honestly honored to have you. I can see one of our PhD students in the Department of Political Science and many others here. This is a good start. And this is a tradition that will be maintained or should be maintained for one to excel in the academics. In fact, there is a standard NUC regulation before you are presented for viva voce. That is the final oral examination. You have to at least publish two papers in a highly rated journal, be it international or national. And such forum provides you the opportunity to listen to scholars who have arrived, like Professor Ta, like Professor Patti, and like Professor Zalanga, who we are going to hear. Zalanga started his sojourn in the academic about or more than 30 years ago. He is someone known by the dean of our faculty, Professor Ibrahim Waziri Abakar. So from a humble beginning, today he is an international scholar of note. Jafar. Jaf. Malam baya yi fa. Malam. Therefore, we are going to, after the presentation by Professor Zalanga, have some online presentations. Because as this conference is taking place, there are many thousands of online participants. And we have quite a States of America. Professor Zalanga earned the Teachers Grade 3 certificate in 1977 from the Teachers College, Misau, in Bauchi State of Nigeria. Professor Zalanga also earned the Teachers Grade 2 certificate in 1981 from the same institution and got the Graduate Certificate in Education from the Bayero University, Kano, Nigeria in 1986. He proceeded to the University of Jos, Plateau State, and earned the Master of Science in Sociology in 1994. This was preceded by the Master coursework in Bayero University, Kano, Nigeria, between 1988 to 1989. So he is a product of cross-fertilization in the academia. Given his exceptional brilliance Professor Zalanga moved to the University of Minnesota in the United States for the PhD in sociology, which he backed at the beginning of the 21st century in the year 2000. His doctoral thesis, under the supervision of Professor Ronald Aminzadeh, was highly rated in the United States. Between 2000 to 2004, Professor Zalanga took up the teaching position of Assistant Professor of Sociology in Bethel University, USA. He became a tenured staff, an Associate Professor of Sociology in the same university between 2004 to 2011. He was proclaimed a Professor of Sociology in Bethel University in 2011 and held the position in the university up to 2021. On account of his versatility, Professor Zalanga became also a Professor of Social Work in the year 2022. He served as Chair, Department of Sociology and Reconciliation Studies at Bethel University between 2018 to 2019 and Director of Research and Publications in the period between 2018 to 2022. Throughout his sojourn in the university system, Professor Zalanga has taught about 30 undergraduate courses covering different range of interrelated disciplines and 10 postgraduate courses. He has supervised 37 master dissertations and about 10 PhD theses. Between 2017 to 2018, Professor Zalanga was a Fulbright Scholar on Fellowship in Nigeria. In 1998, he embarked on another PhD research on the Delta region of Nigeria, funded by the MacArthur Program at the University of Minnesota, and proceeded for another PhD research in Malaysia, funded by same MacArthur Program. He has to his credit 15 international awards of distinction on account of his outstanding scholarship, notable among which is the Kwame Nkrumah Award for Service to Pan-Africanism, bestowed on him at the University of Texas African Conference, University of Texas at Austin in 2017. Professor Samuel Zalanga has 194 publications and manuscripts in highly rated international and national journals and books and scholarly/professional engagements. His scholarly works and professional engagements span a period over 20 years. He is a fellow of the Carnegie African Diaspora and the U.S. Fulbright Fellow for Teaching and Research. On behalf of the Vice Chancellor and the Dean of the Faculty, I now call on Professor Zalanga to please present his lead paper.
The opportunity that has been given to me to make this presentation, even though I'm not there in Gombe. But Gombe State is a state that I have close affinity to in terms of my emotional attachment, because the great majority of my classmates and close associates since when I was doing my O-level are all from Gombe State. And recently, my best friend in Nigeria, who was my best man when I got married, passed away, and it was very, very emotionally devastating. But all the same, I appreciate the opportunity that I've been given to come and share some thoughts about some issues of concern regarding the conference. Now, I hope you can all see my topic of presentation, and I don't have to necessarily introduce myself as a person so much, but I will just say that I'm from the village of Zalanga in Ganjigo local government area of Bauchi State. And in terms of academic training, I'm a sociologist by training, and methodologically, I am a historical sociologist. And in terms of my scholarship and teaching, even though I study sociology, but when I started teaching, my scholarship really broadened, and sometimes people may not assume or may not think I'm a sociologist from my presentation. Some people sometimes would think I'm an economist. Some would think I'm a religious studies scholar or somebody who specializes in Western social thought or something like that. So I really enjoy kind of delving into varieties of scholarship. The next thing I would just like to say about myself is my social location in the broader context of scholarly discussion. I made this commitment since when I was an undergraduate, and this has persisted in my life. And so, whenever I engage in any kind of scholarly discussion, I'm always oriented to think about or to express concern about the subalterns. The subalterns, of course, are those people that are considered to be lower in rank or kind of, if you like, marginalized. Or on the other hand, the people that Franz Fanon called the wretched of the earth. I always tell colleagues that I'm interested in knowing the center because I want to know the margins. So in other words, some people want to be the center because they want to be located there. But for me, in any country I have visited or in any kind of society that I decided to study, I would try to locate what is the center, if you like, the center of power or anything you might want to think about. And once I'm able to know the center of power, then I can quickly be able to identify who are the subalterns and who are those at the margins. Okay? To me, this is really, really very important. There are some scholars who may not be interested in this, but for me, I always like to engage society from the bottom of the pyramid. But in order for me to know the bottom of the pyramid, I also have to know the top of the pyramid. The third point that I would just like to make in this respect or related to the introduction is an important question to us. I've been teaching for 22 years, even though now I am an administrator, but I've taught for 22 years at Bethel University, and I was granted a professor emeritus status. But in the course of my teaching, I realized that there's something really, really very important that came up. That if we want to build a more just and fair society for all, or as you remember in Nigeria's second national development plan, there are 5 objectives, and one of the objectives, or the first one, was to build a just and egalitarian society. Okay, so if our goal is to be, if our goal is to build an, if our goal is to build a just and egalitarian society, then the question is, what are some foundational issues that we have to take into consideration? And this is what led me to start asking my students this question. Whenever I'm going to teach a course, I will send an email to the students that on the first day of class, I would like them to bring the answers to these 2 questions, typewritten, because it will be part of the discussion we're going to have on the first day of class. And the first question is, what does it mean to be human? And the second is, what do we owe each other for being humans or as humans? This is to me very, very important. There are some questions that I also add to this, which is like, if 3 people are climbing a mountain and one of them was able to climb to the top of the mountain, and then the other one stopped somewhere halfway, they were not able to reach the top of the mountain, and then the third person just stayed at the base of the mountain, they were not able to climb. If all of them were reporting sincerely and honestly what they're seeing around them, will they be reporting the same thing? Okay, let me just explain why this is really very important to me. First, what does it mean to be human, and what do we owe each other for being human is very, very important. I would say that irrespective of what your religious background is or your ethnic or whatever background is, and I've taught a course of religion in society for about 16, 17 years. So I have delved into the question of religion, not just one religion, but religion in general, because sometimes many people in Nigeria or in other societies are just concerned about their own religion, but they don't care to study other religious tradition or the institution of religion as a whole, not just kind of your own religion. So when you ask this question, you find out that even some religious people struggle with it. They struggle with it because they assume sometimes that what it means to be human are only people who are defined by their religion that way. So, for instance, if somebody is a Muslim or a Christian, they may be unaware, sometimes it may be subconscious, that they define what it means to be human from that religious perspective. But from my study of history and society, and I have taught Western humanities apart from teaching a course on Africa, and there are a lot of. I taught also a course, an anthropology course, introduction to anthropology course, and it's all question of religion. There's no one single answer to it because from time immemorial, people have tried to engage the divine in so many ways, and so there's not one single way you will say that. I know some of you may feel uncomfortable with this, but if you do a thorough and deep study of that, you will realize that actually there's no one single individual who will say in their right senses, if they have studied religion, or make claim that they have really solved God or they have solved the identity of God or understood the identity of God as if God is a mathematical equation on the blackboard that they have solved. I think there's mystery about God as a human being because God is infinite and we human beings are finite. I don't think a finite person can fully understand the infinite. Okay? So, what does it mean to be human and what we owe each other for being human is the foundation for us to create a more just and fair society for all. And any person that has not been able to answer this question will find it very difficult to engage meaningfully in building a society that is diverse, but at the same time being committed to justice and fairness for all. And with regard to climbing the mountain, one of the things I want to draw your attention to is just that these people will be reporting honestly what they see. The guy at the top of the mountain or the person who is just halfway to the top of the mountain and the person at the base, they will all be reporting what they have seen honestly, but they're not going to be reporting the same thing because of their location. So your social location affects your experience. Whether that social location is geographic or social, it's very, very important. Sometimes you hear people talking and they're not aware that their social location or their geographical location limits their understanding unless they deliberately decide to engage in understanding other locations apart from this. So these three people, if they really want to have a comprehensive understanding of what is out there, the top guy would have to rely on the person at the base of the mountain to understand what is at the base. And the person at the base cannot see far away, so they would have to rely on the person who is at the top of the mountain who can see far. And then the person in the middle somewhere would be able to tell you something that is not very, very far away, but it is not also at the base of the mountain, okay? So what that simply means is that people need to have dialogue with each other so that they can develop a comprehensive or understanding, or they can synthesize the different perspectives. Okay, the other thing that I also want to draw our attention in the kind of discussion I'm going to engage in here is Plato's allegory of the cave. Some of you are already familiar with this, but Plato's allegory of the cave to me brings this distinction between the empiricist and the social realist epistemology. These are two different ways of engaging reality. So let me just briefly share what the allegory of the cave is and then relate it to what I'm trying to talk here. So as you remember, in the allegory of the cave, Plato said that there were people who were tied in chains in a cave and they couldn't go outside. The only thing they could see was that there was some light that is reflected in the cave, so they could see the light, and they thought the light was everything because it's there, and they are tied down in chains. So when they see the light, they think it is what it is. That's just light. So, but one day, one of them was able to escape outside, and when he escaped outside, he realized that what they were seeing in the cave as light is just a reflection. The reality is the sun outside. The sun outside is the real reality, the underlying reality, because when the sun lights up, then it is reflected in the cave. Okay? So the difference here is that what they were seeing in the cave was appearance. Yes, there was something there, but it was just the appearance. The reality is outside. So in this case, epistemology, in terms of epistemology, some people make a distinction between empiricism and social realism, or social realism, sorry. And the social realists agree with empiricists that there's something we have to start with. You observe certain things, you can see them with your eyes, you can classify them or whatever. But while the empiricists will stop there, the social realists will say, but that's just the starting point. The reality is always beneath the surface. So if you want to understand reality, you have to go beneath the surface. So in the same way, I want to say that if you really want to understand Nigeria's problems, sometimes we talk about them, this happened here, this happened there, this and that. But all this, while true and relevant, but from a social realist epistemology, there's something deeper. If you really want to understand what's going on in Nigeria, you have to go beneath the surface, because all those things that you're seeing on the surface are just reflections. And then further engaging Plato very well, I also want to raise the question of the tripartite conception of the human psyche. Most of the time when people talk about the problems of Nigeria, like corruption and things like that, and even though I live here in the United States, I still catch up with what is happening in Nigeria. Nowadays, you can watch a Nigerian television channel here, and on your phone, they can always, Nigerian stories can always show up, or Nigerian news can always show up. So I can see how the discussions are going on. But here is what Plato said here that I think is very relevant for us and we should take note of. That the human psyche is divided into three. You have reason and the mind, and then you have the heart and soul, and then you have human appetitive desires. So these human appetitive desires are like crude human instinctual desires. And Sigmund Freud, in his book Civilization and its Discontents, he extended this argument, but I don't have the time to get into this. So, but essentially, one of the things you can draw from Plato is just that what Plato is saying here is that even within ourselves, within every individual, there's this war that is going on. There's this tension that is going on between appetitive human desires, which means crude human instinctual desires, and then the demands of your heart and soul, and then the demands of your reason and mind. Okay? So according to him, there's need for balance among these three. But the most dangerous thing that can happen to any human society is when, in a lot of people in that society, the war that exists between each of us, or within each of us, result in a situation where human appetitive desires take over or colonize the human heart and soul and colonize human reason. Okay? If human reason or the mind and human heart and soul are colonized by human appetitive desires or crude human instinctual desires, then you are done. What you see happening outside, like in the case of Nigeria or any other society, this person did this person did that, or whatever. All those things you're seeing outside is a projection of a crisis. So if I want to know whether somebody is really cultivated or not, I don't have to get into their heart. I can see from their behavior, because if somebody's concern is just to accumulate money or whatever, even if they are educated, that education will become a slave to that crude human instinctual desire. So take note of that. And then finally, in the introduction, I would also like to highlight the role of, or the work of Lawrence Kohlberg. Now, Lawrence Kohlberg theory, or theory of moral development, where he identified three levels of moral development, was criticized constructively by Carol Gilligan. But I don't have the time to get into that detail. But Carol Gilligan's critique, while constructive, did not change the substance of the argument of Kohlberg's theory. Lawrence Kohlberg is a survivor of the Jewish Holocaust in Germany under the Nazi. And so he became a professor of psychology at Harvard University. And he was interested in trying to know, for instance, what kind of, given what happened, given the way the Jewish people were killed, I don't want to digress so much and talk about it because it's very dehumanizing and very terrible if you hear the way the Jewish people were killed at that time. But the point he's trying to make is just that what is the kind of level of moral reasoning that people involved in or engaged in that would lead people to behave that way? Okay? Because essentially, you see this, and there are some elements of that in Nigeria where human beings will go and kill other human beings, either in the name of God or something like that, and claim that they're doing the right thing. If you study all these things, you just feel sorry that this is not about religion. This is just about some problem with moral development. So, in these three levels of moral development, in the pre-conventional stage, people are just like children in terms of their moral reason. In pre-conventional stage, people just do what they are doing because they want to avoid punishment, like children. Children obey their parents sometimes, not because they have some moral principle or ethical principle that they are holding on to, but they just want to make sure that they don't offend mom or dad because they are going to be punished. Okay? At the higher level, at the pre-conventional stage, is cost-benefit analysis. So these are people who are grown up, but in terms of their moral reasoning, they only engage in behavior that would avoid them cost and then bring them benefit. That's just what they. That's just how they think. So I can promise you anything or engage in any commitment, but when I see something that would be better for me, I can just throw you under the bus, as Americans will say. Conventional is when people's level of moral development is shaped by what their group tells them. And that group can be peer group, the family, or their nation, or their ethnic group. The highest level of moral development in the conventional state is your nation. So if you are a Nigerian and Nigeria tells you that the people of Niger, because they are from another country, are less than human, you say, yeah. Or the people of Cameroon or Chad or whatever, you say, yeah. Or if it is ethnic group, your ethnic group tells you that, oh, those people, the members of that ethnic group are less than human. Okay, you say yes. Or the members of that religious group are less than human. You say, yeah. So that's just it. It's conventional. Just what your group tells you. Okay? And you can see a lot of elements of that. There's no kind of like deep thinking about that. This does not only exist in Nigeria, it exists in other societies, but I'm emphasizing Nigeria because this conference is about our own context in Nigeria. So that's the conventional level of moral development. But the post-conventional level of moral development is where somebody is committed to certain ethical principles. If something is good for me, I cannot deny it for another person. In other words, I am not just concerned about what is good for me, but I am committed to holding ethical principles across the board. Not just for me, not just for people in my ethnic group, not just for people in my religious group, but I will try to apply those moral and ethical principles, fairness and justice to all people. That's the highest level of commitment. You are not concerned about just your group or yourself, okay? So I want you to think at this level, at this point, at what level of moral development do you think most Nigerians are? Are we at the post-conventional level? Are we at the conventional level? Or are we at the pre-conventional level? Okay? Because if we are at the post-conventional level, my father is originally from Yobe State, from Gashua area, but actually, given my level of education now, I cannot imagine somebody trying to make me feel good by trying to dehumanize people of another ethnic group or people in another country in the war or something like that, so that my status, so that my ego would be elevated because I am from a particular place or something like that. No. Okay, so let's try to move as much as possible to the post-conventional level because we will be committed to fairness and justice for all. Okay, let me move very quickly because we may be running out of time. The other thing that I want to bring up in terms of, as you can see here, some insight into Nigeria's current political and socio-economic situations. So I just take three themes from development studies because my area of specialization at my doctoral level is development studies and social change. So let me just take these three ideas and then we go to the conclusion. One, the history question. One of the ways you can engage the Nigerian situation, especially the problems we're dealing with, is to raise this history question. And as you can see there, I said, poor appreciation and effective understanding of history and its relevance for who we are today and who we are likely to be tomorrow. History is really very, very important. As one scholar said, history is not just like what you read in the books or what you are told as stories or something like that. History is something that we embody. And I don't have the time to get into this, but I can show you how the situation you find in different parts of Nigeria, the current crisis Nigeria is going through, is all a reflection of the history of the country. So the pain, I cannot imagine what some Nigerians are really going through today. And to be frank with you, I grew up very, very poor. My parents were very poor. But when I was at Bayero University, Kano, as an undergraduate, I had this idealistic feeling that Nigeria was going to become, not only Nigeria, but Africa. I remember how very committed we were to the liberation of Zimbabwe and South Africa at that time, you know. But things have changed. Sometimes I wonder whether it is the same Nigeria. I'm not saying that at that time Nigeria was part of it, but I remember very, very well when Mandela was released from prison, how in Bauchi, I think in one of the stadiums or someplace there was a huge gathering to celebrate that. But how many people will do that today in Nigeria, given the way things have changed? But I cited a book there by Friedrich Nietzsche, who is a German philosopher, but he spent most of his time outside Germany, like in Switzerland. He said that there's not just one type of history, but there are three types of histories: monumental history, antiquarian history, and critical history. When people write monumental history, they're just concerned about the history of the great men and women, if you like. Of course, in Nigeria, sometimes it's just the great men of history, because gender is not really straight, so gender equality is not really stressed. But monumental history simply means it's like the news, the TV, and everything is just about these great men and women. Wherever they are, that's where history is. Okay? So these are probably great men that in some cases they have accomplished very much. They have done something really very, very, very much. And according to Nietzsche, each one of these approaches to history has its own advantages and disadvantages, because the title of the book where this discussion came from is called On the Advantage and Disadvantages of History for Life. Okay, if anybody is interested in reading this book, which I would encourage, they should contact the organizer of the conference and let me know, and I can send them a PDF copy of the book. It's very, very interesting. So this monumental history focus on great achievements. When you read it, you just feel like there's no problem in history. History is just one achievement to the other. They tend to ignore the pain and suffering of people, ordinary people, because they are just concerned about monumental achievements. Okay? So the advantage of monumental history, according to Nietzsche, is that it can inspire people. Like, you read history and you see the courage demonstrated by some people, and you say, look at how this person showed the courage to do the right thing. So I am also inspired, and I'm going to do the same. Okay? So that's the advantage. But the disadvantage is that it is only focus on spectacular events or great achievements in history, great people, but it totally ignores the suffering and pain of ordinary people, the way they have been treated. Okay, the second approach to history is antiquarian. Antiquarian history is just this approach to history that of humankind was in the past. Now we're just in the era of kind of like decline, okay? Era of kind of like crisis or something like that. If you really want to be inspired, you have to look back at the past. The problem with this approach to history is that you can select any most idealistic period in history in the past. If you go back and study it, you will find out that during that time there was a lot of crisis also going on. It was not a perfect period. And if you think you're going to be able to do that, go and check. You're going to find out that even the time when the prophets were in this war, you would find out that at the time there were crises going on. There were a lot of injustices that were committed by other people. So there's no perfect period, okay? In America, for instance, and a good example of antiquarian history are these people the Confederates, who still celebrate this civil war in the United States, which was fought in the 1800s, around in the 1860s. And the goal was just to keep slavery going on in the United States, okay? While others really oppose it. So they try to celebrate that civil war, their vision to create a whole country in the southern part of the United States where slavery would be legitimate. So you can see that antiquarian history is trying to go back, but you can see that that period in the past, which some people are thinking was really great for them, was really a terrible period for black people, okay? So, but the other advantage of antiquarian history is that there are certain things in our past that we still want to hold on to. Like in Africa, we want to change, but I wouldn't suggest that we abandon everything. There are certain things in our history that if we look very carefully, we'll say, after much thorough examination, these things are worthy of our attention, and we're willing to honor them by keeping them in our society, even though we will have to change the way we maintain them. We cannot, because we want to celebrate our culture, allow our women, grown-up women, to be dancing almost naked in the 21st century in the name of that is our culture. I don't think that is bringing respect to the women. If the goal is just to bring people together, we have to find a way to still maintain the dance, but in a different way that fits the 21st century. And then critical history is just concerned about history written from the perspective of the socially marginalized or oppressed people. Okay? When you write history from the perspective of people who are marginalized or oppressed, that's critical history. Critical history, according to Nietzsche, also has advantages and disadvantages. The advantage of it is that it's not going to accept anything on face value. You can say somebody did this, they are great, this and that, or whatever, but when critical historians engage that topic, they will dress down that person, metaphorically speaking, to become naked. They will pull everything that the sacred canopy that covers that person and just at the end tell you that this is who this person really is. Take, for instance, Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson in the United States is the guy who wrote the Declaration, or whose original work led to the Declaration of Independence, which is a great document. Okay? And Thomas Jefferson did not recognize the full humanity of black people. He thought black people in this country were inferior to the indigenous people here, which means the Native Americans. But you know what? He couldn't resist the sexual attractiveness of his slave, a black woman, and he had children with her. Can you imagine this? You think this person is really inferior, okay? But at the same time, you are willing to go and sleep with them or something like that. So you can see that by the time critical historians will analyze Thomas Jefferson this way or whatever, and by the time you read this analysis, you say, this guy is just like any other guy out there. Because, yeah, he wrote all these great ideas or whatever, but he had a slave, and he thought black people were inferior, but he could not hold himself, he could not keep himself away from his slave, and so he slept with her, and then they ended up having children, okay? So the danger of critical history is that it can be so critical that it can create a sense of skepticism, and people can become cynical. Cynical in the sense that any idea you bring, the critical historian can tear it down and just say, this is what it is. Okay? You talk about this or whatever, you talk about all these religious people or whatever, or religion or whatever. If you allow a critical historian to go into religion, they will show you how religion or the name of God was used to dehumanize other people. Okay? To dehumanize other people. And then you wonder, how is religion that is supposed to make us good now become the instrument that people use to dehumanize other people? So by the time the critical historian finishes analyzing, you just feel like, well, it is just what it is. There's nothing special really there, okay? So that's one danger of critical history. It can make you to become not only skeptical, but you can become cynical. But on the other hand, it can demystify many claims that people really make to be some special or extraordinary human beings or super this, super that, okay? So these are the three types of approaches to history, and I want you to think about them in Nigeria, the case of Nigeria. Nietzsche says that if you really want to have a balanced society, a society that is really stable, you need all these three types of history. Don't take one and ignore the other. And each one of them, as I have shown you, has some advantages and disadvantages. So think about that. In Nigeria, do we just emphasize monumental history, antiquarian history, or critical history? Which one do you think we need more? Okay. And then next, insights from Denis Gollet's three core values of development. So Nigeria has woefully failed to achieve the following. And according to Denis Gollet, there are three core values of development. One, sustenance. If you really are calling yourself develop or you're developing, you must be able, or you must demonstrate that you are able to sustain or create sustenance for the people, for the citizens of your country. So sustenance here simply means the ability to meet people's basic needs, to enhancement of citizens' self-esteem, and then freedom from servitude. Now, the ability to uh, provide sustenance simply means to be able to guarantee people's basic needs. Nobody should go out feeling hungry. Nobody should feel like they don't have what to eat and all those kind of things. Okay, this is really, really very, very important. But I think in Nigeria, you can see that you can claim out of patriotism or anything that Nigeria is this and that. And I've seen in a lot of videos people trying to say Nigeria is this, Nigerians are intelligent people, they're special people, or something, something like that. Now, because of my study of development studies and Western humanities, I don't feel influenced by just simplistic way of thinking like that. There was a video where somebody recorded about 15 minutes trying to show that Nigerians are this kind of, even in Africa, they are these special people or whatever. So after sharing the video, I just got a video of a dog market, a market of dog, where they sell dogs in Abuja. It's close to Abuja or something like that. And you see people just doing the bargain of how to sell dogs. Some of the dogs actually are have experienced malnutrition or something like that. And then I share it on the same platform. I say, wow, Nigeria is a very complex country. It is this country of extraordinary human beings, but look at how some people are trying to survive by selling dogs in the market. Okay? So sustenance is really very, very important, but unfortunately, we have not been able to address this basic issue in Nigeria. And then the question of self-esteem. Self-esteem is different from arrogance. If you want to succeed in this world, you have to have self-esteem. The easiest way you can destroy somebody is to crush them within themselves, to make them feel they are worthless, they are incapable of doing anything. But if someone has a deep sense of self-esteem, you can do anything to them to make them feel like they are a failure or they cannot do this, but they will remain very strong in their hearts. And when I study the history of black slaves in this country, there's a documentary called Many Rivers to Cross. When you watch that documentary, you just feel like, how are these black people able to survive? Because when you are living and you wake up every day, you know that you're going to be a slave, you are a property. Just like you buy insurance for your car or you buy insurance for any property. Similarly, the owners of the slaves could buy insurance on their slaves, human beings, because the slaves, the human beings, were treated as property. They are investment. Okay? So my point is, if people are treated this way, you have to ask yourself, how are they able to really maintain that sense of self-esteem that they did not go and commit suicide? Okay? I don't have the time to get into that, but this is something about the history of African Americans in the United States that has really influenced me. Okay? So, and I think in Nigeria there are many people whose self-esteem has been crushed because of the way the government has been treating them or because of the way the system we have created has impacted their lives. I can give you more examples, but I'm running out of time. The third core value of development is freedom from servitude. So the first value is the sustenance of people. People's basic needs must be satisfied. Second, their self-esteem. People have an environment has to be created for people to feel like they are worthy and they are capable of doing that. But third is freedom from servitude. And when we say servitude, which is like a kind of slavery is not just slave to other human beings. Remember, in the case of Plato said that human beings can be slave to their appetitive desires. If you are a slave to your appetitive desires, it means your mind and reason and your heart and soul have been colonized by crude human instinctual desires. Okay, so you're just somebody is just behaving like an animal in a way. Okay, so freedom from servitude in this case simply means being emancipated from oppressive material conditions. Oppressive material conditions. Poverty is an example of that. Okay, there are many people who would do certain things wrong, such as stealing somebody's property or killing another person sometimes because of their material conditions. Okay, they have been compelled by circumstances to resort to those kinds of behavior. And then not being a slave to nature, beliefs, oppressive institutions or people. There's a lot we can discuss here. So slavery can mean being a slave, servitude can mean being a slave to institutions in your own society, okay? Or being a slave to nature or beliefs. I have been very interested in some traditional beliefs, not only in Nigeria, but in other countries. And you could just see that sometimes people are just kind of like, if you look at the transition of the world from the medieval period to the era of the Renaissance and then to the Enlightenment, you could just see that there are certain beliefs that enslave people. People cannot do anything because it's like the beliefs just cover up their ability to see. So they see reality just through those lenses, and those lenses are really lenses that are oppressive. Okay, and I think there's that kind of thing going on in Nigeria when you think about the way some people actually. Sometimes when I have conversation with people in my community, some of the people think like in quasi-medieval ways. And when I say quasi-medieval ways, is that we're not in the medieval period, but some of the logic of their reason is consistent with what people in history will consider medieval culture or ways of reasoning. Okay, so third, insights from Dudley Sears, the meaning of development. Dudley Sears was at the Institute of Development Studies in Sussex University in the United Kingdom. And he came up with this concept of the meaning of development at the end of the first decade of development, which was from 1960 to 1970, I believe. And the main argument there was that initially, when the first development decade started, the emphasis was on economic growth. That when society growth, it was automatically believed that it would bring prosperity to everyone in society. So they emphasized economic growth in the first decade of development from 1960 to 1970. But around the end of the 1960s, he conducted this study, and then he found out that many of the countries that have experienced phenomenal economic growth also experience increase in poverty and also increase in inequality. So it means there's something more than that. And it was from this analysis that the idea of growth with equity came into existence. Growth with equity. So it's not enough to talk about an economy growing, say, for instance, like in Nigeria. The economy is growing, but if the rich group of people in Nigeria were white people, we would say Nigeria is an apartheid country. Okay? Because there's economic growth in Nigeria, the benefit goes to a small group of people. So according to him, the questions to ask about development are, what is happening, what has been happening to poverty, what has been happening to unemployment, what has been happening to inequality. In other words, if inequality is increasing, unemployment is increasing or remains the same, or if inequality is increasing or remains the same, in other words, the gap between the rich and the poor, or if poverty is increasing or remains the same, then it doesn't matter whether you have the tallest building in Abuja, whether you have the best highways in the country or something like that, okay? According to him, your country is not developing. Because these three key issues for him are good ways to measure development. What is happening to poverty? What has been happening to unemployment? What has been happening to inequality? I would love to proceed to my conclusion, but unfortunately, I think I'm running out of time. So I will just keep it here. If there's need during the question and answer time, I can respond to some things, but I think I've said a lot to generate some discussion about the situation in Nigeria. So from the point of view of the meaning of development, we have failed according to Dudley Sears, or based on Dudley Sears' analysis, and I agree with him. And then based on the ideas of Dennis Gordon, the three core values of development, you will see that from independence to this period, the capacity of Nigeria to provide the basic needs of Nigerian citizens has actually failed. And we see that there are many Nigerians who have lost self-esteem, not all of them, but a lot of people. And it's not because they are incapable of doing things or they are lacking intelligence or something like that, but it is just simply because of the environment they grew up in or they were forced to grow up in. They don't feel like they have any capacity to do something. And so within themselves, they just feel a lack of capacity to do certain things. And then freedom from servitude, which is also something very important. And the question of history, which type of history is most dominant or popular in Nigeria. And as I said, Nietzsche said that we need a balance among all those three. So I hope this brief recording will generate some questions and discussion. I will be willing to answer the questions. As I said, I have some conclusion, but I'm not going to go over it because I think I'm running out of time. Thank you very much, and I want to say that I appreciate the opportunity to be invited to share some of my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Zalanga. Thank you, Professor Zalanga, for this very thought-provoking and engaging intellectual presentation. There is no doubt a person with 197 publications to do a presentation, then definitely he's pulling from a rich source of knowledge. Professor Zalanga is intellectual reservoir of knowledge, and he is currently at the University of Bethel in the United States of America, in the states of Minnesota. He's been a professor for well over 15 years now, and this is reflective of his outstanding scholarship. We are quite privileged, sir, to have you to do this virtual presentation to our participants on ground and others who are following us online. We thank you so very much, Prof, for this very thought-provoking presentation. We thank you, ladies and gentlemen, our distinguished participants. On this note, I will call on a member of the local organizing committee, Associate Professor Lawal Oladimeji, to present the vote of thanks, after which we are going to go for a short break. The break is meant to last up to 2:50. By 3 o'clock, we will reconvene to have the virtual presentations. Associate Professor Lawal, please.
Members of the high table, distinguished members of the audience, on behalf of the chairman of the LOC, Professor Adewale Ogunrinade, I would like to tender to you a vote of thanks. But before giving a vote of thanks, I'd like to acknowledge and tender apology for the glitches we had, particularly with the virtual presentation. Apparently, it was caused by the technical guy who, instead of being on his duty post to monitor the synchronization, he was nowhere to be found. And that really has given us some setback. But nevertheless, we give God the glory and we thank everyone who has participated one way or the other in making this event a colorful and a successful one. Beginning from the Deputy Governor of Gombe State, who found in his tight schedule the time and the patience to be with us, the Vice Chancellor of Federal University, Kashire, our keynote speaker, who was ably represented by a colleague from FUK, and then the management of Gombe State University and every participant that have played one role or the other, our students, and indeed the members of the LOC. We appreciate the role you have played in bringing us to this far. But again, I will also be quick to also notify us that we have only started. Like the MC has just announced, in a short while we'll proceed for a break of about 25 minutes or thereabouts, and then we'll reconvene for the first syndicate session. And the first syndicate session is dedicated for virtual presenters. And so it has been structured in a manner that those who are going to make virtual presentations have sent in their recorded presentations. And so we hope that we'll be able to take, if not all of them, sizable number of them today. The chairman of that session is the immediate past Deputy Vice Chancellor of the university, Professor Mahmoud Umar, is here with us, and Mala Abdullah Abubakar Arawa is the secretary for that session. We hope that members will find it very interesting, such that we'll be able to listen to various presentations that will be coming from scholars, and then we'll make inputs. With this, I would like to thank you once again, and encourage us to please feel free and relax within the next 20 to 25 minutes, after which we will return for the technical session. Thank you.
So please, the lunch will be delivered here. That notwithstanding, we can still go through the environment, the scenery for those who will want to explore one of the most beautiful universities in Nigeria. But please let us limit our movement within, because as Dr. Lawal Oladimeji said, by 2:50 p.m. we are reconvening. By 3 p.m. the virtual sessions will commence. Thank you so very much.